Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here, just checking in on Bitcoin and some of the crypto market as we roll into the weekend after a couple of, well, mostly one day, but it rolled into the second day. But after a couple of days of sharp, very quick sell-off, we've just basically been sitting flat, sitting tight. You can see here on the 1 hour chart, there has not been a lot of movement after that dramatic fall, and we're just kind of digesting this move lower. And so I want to take a look at some of that. We'll look at some overall performance for the week, and most importantly, we're going to look at a clip from Elon Musk. If you missed it, the shares of Tesla were down sharply today following a live stream interview he did yesterday, which was actually pretty interesting, and but just some of the craziness that's going on and the market's reacted. So we'll take a quick look at that. But let's take a quick look at the coin market cap. So looking at the coin market cap, this is the total market cap including Bitcoin. You can see after finding a top near $240 billion most recently as we entered into September, that quick drop saw the market cap drop to the low 200s. Currently sitting right around that 202 203 mark as I record this. Bitcoin dominance hasn't changed a whole lot, still sitting in that 54-55 range over the last couple of days, just continuing to creep up slowly as the alts have pulled back sharply versus Bitcoin, and mostly because of some of the big cap names that are underperforming Bitcoin significantly, such as Ethereum. We'll take a look at that chart here in a little bit. But BTC dominance, not a huge change, but still gradually grinding up, now in that 54 to 55% range on the total BTC dominance. But going back to the charts here, so I want to zoom out a little bit here just to kind of recalibrate us here. I'm going to go to the daily chart, and you can see after climbing up to that $7,400 zone, we had that huge sell-off here, and this is 2 daily candles, but really this happened over the course of 1 day really quick. Once it sold off, the sell-off continued into the close and into the following candle, and this lasted for like another hour or so into the following close, and then it just settled out and has just been bouncing around and just kind of consolidating that move. This 10 EMA on the daily is still up here near $6,800 while the price is at $6,400, so there's plenty of room for it to catch up here still. We need to see a little bit of a bounce or this to sit tight for a little bit to let that moving average catch up. But I mean, we saw this sell-off before, and it could just continue lower just as likely as it could bounce here in the near term. So a couple of things I'm looking at. I mean, no doubt this chart is bearish. That was a bearish break on the daily chart. That's going to translate into a big bearish engulfing candle on the weekly chart. You can see this candle fully engulfs the prior 2 weeks. In 1 day, we undid about 9-10 days worth of price action very quickly. So this is a bearish candle, no doubt, and volume is still lower, but we have a couple of days left to the close, but just something to keep an eye on here. Technically, if it stopped here and started to rally, this would be a higher weekly low. That would be positive considering we've had a couple already, but it doesn't look very bullish in the near term. Going to the 4 hour chart, this is essentially just a pause that is letting the RSI cool off a little bit. It was very oversold. You see the RSI was down here in the teens on the 4 hour charts. Volume spiked, signifying a little bit of climactic action, and since then it's just kind of been meandering, chopping around here a little bit. You could argue this is just forming another bear flag and setting up another leg lower. All things being equal, just looking at the charts, I would not argue with that, especially since the daily chart still has plenty of room to go before it hits anywhere near oversold conditions, and so we could very well see another leg lower. The area to keep an eye on here in the near term is this 10 EMA first of all, but more importantly, I'm watching this price resistance around that 65.50 mark. If we start to close above that, you can see a pretty quick pop to the upside. First level on the upside that I'd be looking at is around that $6,800 level. The 10 EMA would likely meet there. That's also the first big price resistance going back here. On the Fibonacci analysis, doing a retracement on this move lower, if there was a bounce, you can see the 382 level takes you to right around 6,700. 50% retracement would take you to about 68.29, and so that's the window I'm looking at if we do see a bounce to the upside here in the near term. But to be honest, I'm leaning bearish still. I'm not liking the way this is shaping up. It's actually been surprising at how little of a bounce we did see following that dramatic sell-off. I was honestly expecting a pretty decent oversold bounce to play out. We didn't see that, and in fact we've just been sitting tight here, letting this moving average catch up. So on the downside, look out for around that 6,300 to 6,320 zone. If that is breached, you'll likely see another leg lower. Now, it is important to note that the RSI is oversold, so it may contain the move. We probably won't see another dramatic move like we saw here, but you could still very likely see a test of that 6,100 to 6K level. Going back to the prior support levels, that's the big area to keep an eye on here. This window right here is going to be the must watch, must hold level if the Bitcoin selling continues here in the near term. So right around that 6,100 is where I'd be looking for first support, and then below that, that 6K psychological down to around that 5,900 level, which has been the absolute low here in recent past. So those are the levels to watch near term. But like I said, it's not looking bullish, but we could just as likely see a bounce. The shorts are at historically high levels. Let me go take a look at those. Here's a daily chart of the shorts, and you can see here the highs have been back at that early April low, and we most recently saw that high tested before the pullback and that recent climb to 7,400. But before the top was hit, remember we mentioned there was this 50% spike in shorts, then the selling continued, that drove the shorts higher, and here we are back at the highs again. It would not surprise me that if this time around the shorts overshot to the upside and we made a new high in the total number of short positions that are open, which would lead me to believe we're going to see some more downside in the near term. So that's what I'm looking at for. I'm a little bit cautious here. If we take a look at some of the other charts, first off, taking a look at Ethereum. Ethereum continues to be the weak one, very much looking weak here, a little bit of a descending triangle after that bounce that we saw straight into that 10 EMA on the 4-hour chart. And here it is just selling off still right at support right now, which is basically around that $214 mark here. If you zoom in a little bit to the 1-hour chart, this basically a little descending triangle forming here in the most recent action. So a break below that 214 is not going to look well, and you can likely see another leg to the downside. Volume is getting very quiet here, so I'm expecting a move very soon to play out one way or the other. On the upside, moving above 220 would start to shift the momentum, but ultimately it's going to get above that 233 before it clears any major resistance, and then that could trigger a little bit of a counter trend rally. On the positive, if you're bullish on Ethereum and looking at it from a longer term perspective, one thing to note is in this most recent sell-off, you can see we made a new lower low. Volume did spike, and we saw a huge volume here on Binance. There's a little bit of a dragonfly doji candle that was formed on that day, and as long as the low of today holds above that and doesn't breach the bottom of that, so that's going to be bullish. The RSI is forming a slight bullish divergence here on this most recent drop, meaning that as the price went lower, the RSI did not confirm by going lower. And so that is the one positive for the bulls, but other than that, honestly, there's nothing very strong or bullish about this chart yet. This is a sign, but we got to see some confirmation. You'll get confirmation when it starts to close back above that 233, 235 zone, and then we'll have to retest this most recent resistance now around 268, 269. That's going to be the first test on any kind of counter trend rally. If it breaks lower, the next level that I'm looking for is at 200s. We're basically there, and then historic support around that 150 mark. Other than that, there hasn't been a whole lot of other trades to be had here in the near term. There were a few small winners here yesterday. Ontology was moving pretty nicely. Once it broke out of this small ascending triangle on the 1-hour chart, you saw a quick 10-12% move to the upside. But since then, it's just been fading that move completely, but was one of the stronger names, and so far is holding up better, still making a pattern of higher lows on this 1-hour chart. So one to keep an eye on if this market can get going again. And another one is Dash. Here's the Dash BTC chart. You can see just has been strong here. There's been some news behind it, but it's just moving strongly here. And today we had a very big move to the upside here in this 1-hour candle, and it's just kind of consolidating, holding above this breakout point here and letting the moving average catch up. So one to keep an eye on here again if this market can get going. This is definitely one that's already leading and may continue that momentum to the upside. But beyond those, there really has been no place to hide here in this sell-off over the past week. Looking at the $1 billion club here, you can see the big loser in the last 7 days was Ethereum, down 23%, followed by EOS down 21%, and double-digit losses in many of the other names. Bitcoin down 7, almost 8% for the week. Monero holding up the best, down 1.7% on the week, but very much a red week. No place to hide as Bitcoin fell. Most of the other names underperformed significantly. Now, there have certainly been some good trades to be had over the last couple of days in the non-crypto markets. As you guys know, I do trade a few other markets. Primarily, it's been Forex for me this week. There's been some good trades with some of the big moves in the dollar and some of the other leading currency pairs. But looking at the stocks, Tesla had a huge move. It's already been selling off here, but you saw a huge gap down overnight, and that came on the back of this little interview done yesterday with Elon Musk. And this has become a meme now, and it's actually pretty funny the face he's making there. He was asking, is this legal? And just taking a puff of this, and that just drove the stock price lower as the investors and the shareholders didn't like that. Never a dull moment, my friends. Always something interesting going on. I thought I'd share that with you guys. I know that's not crypto related. I'm a big fan of Elon and the space industry in general, but just always something to entertain us here. But Tesla just not having a good couple of weeks here. You can see the last couple of weeks following that big pump, which came again on a tweet from Elon talking about going private, and that never materialized. The stock has since been selling off, and this was the icing on the cake to the downside. So if you've been a short seller of Tesla, it's just been win after win for Tesla's shorts right now. So as we head into the weekend, guys, I'll be watching Bitcoin in this near term, just kind of looking at that 6,300 level to 6,500 level as we're in this range. But it's important to remember the big picture. We are still within this broader pattern, this big descending triangle pattern. And to be fair, we're making a series of higher lows so far. But until we break out of this pattern, I remain cautious. I've certainly been trading it to the long side, and I still get a lot of questions and good questions around longer term holdings and investments and what I'd be doing here. And my answer is always the same. Until Bitcoin breaks out of this pattern, I will remain cautious. Many of the alts certainly look attractive here in some of the prices, and if you're a long-term believer in some of those projects, then I can understand why this might not be a bad place to look at some of that. But my concern is if Bitcoin breaks below this support line around 5,800, you will see a quick leg down, and that will absolutely hammer the alts, and you'll see further selling there. So it's always dangerous to try to pick the bottom. You can certainly take other approaches such as dollar cost averaging and scaling in slowly as opposed to going 100% in, but my preference is always to just wait for some confirmation. A place to look at BTC would probably be around 6K to 5,800, and if it breaks, then you've got a pretty clear stop at that point. But I'm going to just take the cautious approach, and until we break out of this pattern, which we will likely do going into Q4 here, but until that happens, I'm going to take a cautious approach with any sort of longer term entries, and just going to take the trading approach, whether it's going long or going short, and that's just kind of been my point of view here in the recent months. So that's going to be it for today, guys. I appreciate you all watching. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. I'll see you all on Monday. Until next time, take care, everyone.